The Nigerian healthcare system has suffered several setbacks, as statistics from World Bank shows that Nigeria accounts for 14% of all annual maternal deaths worldwide. Now that is only second to India at 17%. The Save 1 Million Lives initiative was launched in October 2012 to improve maternal and child health. My guest on this week's episode of the program talks about the status of the project. Hello there and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Ibrahim Adra. Thank you for joining us. Nigeria occupies the top spot in Africa and ranks only second globally among countries where open defecation is still being practiced. Now the good news is the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory is partnering with the Minister of Water Resources to address the issue in the nation's capital. The interview segment looks at government Saving 1 Million Lives project. But first, here are the stories that made the headlines within the week in Nigeria's capital. The federal government has been deliberating with its lawyers over the $9.6 billion judgment against Nigeria by a British court over a botched gas deal. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo presided over a meeting that had in attendance the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami SAN, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, and Minister of State for Petroleum, Timipri Silva. Meanwhile, a civil society group staged protests in front of the British High Commission and the Irish Embassy against the judgment.
That the judgment by the Commercial Court in UK is set aside, as it is evident that the judgment is ill-motivated and undermines the sovereignty of Nigeria. 2. Nigerian government and P&ID should go back to the position of the arbitration tribunal in July 2015, where it was concluded that the arbitration, the Nigerian government should pay the sum of $850 million, notwithstanding an out-of-arbitration agreement.
President Muhammadu Buhari has sent a special envoy to President Cyril Ramaphosa to register his displeasure over the killing of Nigerians in South Africa. The special representative of the president is the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ambassador Ahmed Abubakar. He has since met with the South African leader and is expected back in the country. The president has promised to address the nation on the development after receiving a brief from the special envoy.
Quite very senseless.
Meanwhile, the federal government has summoned the South African High Commissioner, Mr. Bobby Moreau, over the xenophobic attacks. Ambassador Moreau met with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyama.
In the first place, we have to address the issue of compensation. There has to be accountability and there has to be responsibility for compensating all those Nigerians that have suffered loss. And we are going to absolutely push for that.
In the meantime, the federal government has revealed that Air Peace has offered to evacuate Nigerians from South Africa. The airline will only evacuate those willing to return to the country in light of the recent xenophobic attacks. Nigeria pulled out of the just concluded World Economic Forum in Cape Town, South Africa, over fresh xenophobic attacks. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo was expected to represent Nigeria at the forum. However, some governors and government officials who have already left the country before the withdrawal were not recalled.
The Vice President, as you know, was scheduled to go to South Africa to attend the World Economic Forum. Clearly, with this climate, he has, Mr. President and himself have agreed that he should not go. So Mr. President has pleaded and is likely to make a statement on this, addressing the Nigerian people, to please, please, please desist from acts of vandalism and aggression.
Police and protesters clash in Abuja, the nation's capital, following reprisal attack on South African businesses. Although there was heavy security presence at the Jabi Mall, a major billboard bearing the advert of the South African telecom firm was burnt down. The South African High Commission was also shut down over fears of a reprisal attack.
You can take Nigeria and Nigerians for granted.
The federal government is not planning to sever its relationship with South Africa over the xenophobic attacks. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyama, made the revelation after appearing before the Senate Committee on Diaspora.
We're not by any means at the stage where we are breaking diplomatic relations with South Africa. But as I said, we will wait for the envoy to come back. There are different actions that can be taken at the diplomatic level without necessarily breaking off diplomatic ties.
The House of Representatives will authorize funding for victims of the xenophobic attacks in South Africa who wish to take legal action against the perpetrators. That's according to the Speaker of the House, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, during a press conference.
We intend not only to determine the causes of these latest events, but also to assess and account for the losses in life and property that have occurred. This will allow the government to more accurately demand reparations to compensate our citizens who suffered in this recent orgy of violence. The House of Representatives is ready to authorize legal funding for those citizens who wish to take legal action against identified perpetrators of the violence, as well as those who sponsored them or permitted their actions to occur and continue.
Staying with diplomatic issues, a Chinese delegation led by a special envoy visited President Muhammadu Buhari, bearing assurances of the government of China to improve on its cooperation and support to Nigeria. The meeting between the delegation and President Buhari discussed Nigeria's development challenges, with the federal government promising to provide counterpart funding for agreements reached.
We want you to carry our most sincere appreciation to the President of what he has been doing in terms of the development of our deficit in agriculture, what you are doing in the roads, the rail, the quality of the job is good.
President Muhammadu Buhari believes that Nigeria's problems require uniquely Nigerian solutions, especially in areas of provision of infrastructure. President Buhari made this point when he received the Council of the Nigerian Society of Engineers during a courtesy call at the State House, Abuja.
I have always said Nigeria's problems require uniquely Nigerian solutions. This is especially the case when it comes to areas of infrastructure development. I therefore look forward to our continued partnership as we transform Nigeria into the nation of our dreams.
Welcome back. As part of efforts to end open defecation in the country, the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Malam Mohammed Bello, is working with the Ministry of Water Resources to end the menace in the nation's capital. Now, this is how.
Open defecation is one of the ways people respond to nature's calls, especially in places where there are no toilet facilities. Currently, Nigeria, with her developmental and infrastructural challenges, has growing concerns in managing the menace of open defecation. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics in collaboration with the United Nations Children's Fund, no fewer than 50% of residents of the Federal Capital Territory defecate openly due to the challenge of non-availability of toilets in public places.
Director of Water Quality and Sanitation.
At this meeting, the Minister of Water Resources, who is championing the efforts to stop open defecation across the country, is seeking a partnership with the Federal Capital Territory Administration to kickstart the Clean Nigeria Use the Toilet campaign, aimed at making Nigeria open defecation free by 2025.
We have developed this open defecation free agenda by 2025, and we are mobilizing resources at the highest political level to ensure sanitation budget lines are consistently increased between now and 2025. And to say also that the private sector and the development partners are equally being mobilized to join this crusade. We hope that we're appealing that you prioritize water, sanitation, and hygiene in the FCT with dedicated funding. We are also asking, recall I had earlier sent a letter asking that we should build more sanitation facilities in public places, motor parks and markets and gardens, and put mechanisms in place to ensure proper use. And we are ready to work together with you in that regard.
Despite being one of Nigeria's most modern cities, there are only a few public toilets in the nation's capital, so people resort to places like under bridges, uncompleted buildings, and roadsides. There are no mobile toilets in the city center. Toilets are only available in some gardens, major markets, and motor parks. For the major markets and motor parks, one has to pay to use them. But the FCT minister is determined to end the menace.
2 or 3 years ago, we keyed into your wash system. I recall you sent me statistics of how we stand in Abuja, and really there were dismal figures. I discussed that with you at length, and you sent in a delegation here who have been speaking with our team. So after that meeting, what we have done is to identify locations within the Federal Capital City itself. A team under the Federal Capital Development Authority has already identified locations where we intend to put up public toilets in partnership with the private sector. And these toilets will be powered by solar. And then they will be designed in such a way, we already have prototype designs in such a way that they will also add to the aesthetic and the beauty of the environment, so that really ordinarily you wouldn't even know they are public toilets. But having said so, since we are still at the relatively preliminary stages, our relevant agencies will partner with you so that you can review all that to make sure that it's something that can be sustained. Within the wider territory, these are where the challenges are. But based on what you have said and the interface that we are going to have with you after today's meeting, I'm sure we will be able to surmount that.
One of the major factors encouraging open defecation in many parts of Nigeria, including the FCT, is the lack of access to potable water. And that's according to a recent Water Aid report, which says over 122 million Nigerians still lack access to basic sanitation facilities. The FCT minister explains that water is not a problem in the nation's capital.
Based on our previous engagements directly through our agencies, we have tried to work together and see what we can do. And I do recall that we had to look at our water board to ensure that an agency catering for rural water supply was created based on your advice. I recall very well, and I think it's in the pipeline, or it has already been done. In the FCT, raw water supply is not the real issue, because as you know, we have enough water at the Lower Osuma Dam, which is annually supplemented by interbasin transfer from Gurara Dam under your ministry. And we have the water treatment plant that is adequate for the needs of the capital city for a reasonable period of time to come. The main challenge, of course, being able to reticulate and distribute the water to other newer phases of the FCT. And that, I'm pleased to say that we have a system of about 6 major water tanks under construction now. You know, by virtue of the topography of the Federal Capital Territory, you find that most of the water flows by gravity. But there are areas that have slightly higher elevation than the Lower Osuma Dam itself, and we are introducing projects that will bring in pumping stations to be able to supplement the water pressure. I'm saying all this to say that basic water supply is there. And we are working towards ensuring that other parts of the Federal Capital City, especially phases 3 and 4, are covered.
The Minister of State for the FCT, Hajia Ramatu Aliyu, will be coordinating the activities that will ensure that the open defecation target is achieved in the nation's capital.
The World Bank observed that Nigeria accounts for more than 900,000 women and children who die every year, largely from preventable causes. Similarly, the nation accounts for 13% of all global deaths of children under the age of 5. However, this is exactly what the Saving 1 Million Lives project wants to reverse, as explained by the national coordinator in this interview. Dr. Ibrahim Kana, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin a conversation by talking about the Saving 1 Million Lives project. Now, we do know that it has a laudable objective, which include utilization and quality of high-impact reproductive, as well as child health and indeed nutrition. It was launched in 2012.
That's correct.
Where are we at the moment?
Well, I think we've made significant progress in the sense that the program, as the name implies, Saving 1 Million Lives, program for result, two components matched together. One, statistics shows that close to 1 million mothers and children are lost every year. That's why we give them Saving 1 Million Lives. Program for result is an innovative method of financing primary health care in Nigeria. They are matched together for us to implement throughout the country. So since the outset, I think we've made a lot of progress in the sense that we have made states to focus on the areas of data, to focus more attention on areas of maternal, newborn, and child health. Overall, we have made states to focus on attaining universal health coverage. Basically, we try to put states in front in such a way that we say, follow this, do this, you achieve result, we give you money. So as against the previous system whereby the federal government actually construct health facilities, recruit health workers, now we want the states to compete with itself. Sokoto compete with Sokoto, Lagos compete with Lagos. Then we provide you with disbursement after each round of surveys. We have conducted 1 round of survey and 12 states have achieved improvement and we give them funds.
Can you put figures to this improvement we're talking about?
Yeah, improvement now, we look at, we consider the fact that every state, with or without federal government intervention, each state must have at least 1 percentage point increase in the indices of maternal, newborn, and child health. Therefore, we carefully selected the key indicators that are important in improving maternal, newborn, and child health, and nutrition as well. Now, based on that, we assume that for each year, every state must achieve at least 1 percentage point increase. Therefore, the funds we are given, for each additional percentage point increase, we are giving the state $205,000, significant amount of money, really. However, at the beginning of the program, the federal government decided to give as a pump $1.5 million to each state of the federation. And so that to help the state actually to kickstart the process of providing primary health care to the populace at the state level.
Forgive me if I probe further. 1 percentage point increase in terms of figures, in terms of number of women that has been saved. Can you put a figure to that as well?
Yes. Now, if you look at that varies from state to state. Now, the percentage point increase is improvement in the services provided. Take, for example, number of children that sleep under the nets. The percentage point increase is there must be a certain number of children that must be sleeping under the nets each year, so long as you provide the nets. Women, prevention of elimination of mother-to-child transmission. Women must be screened for HIV during antenatal. The percentage point increment is that there must be a certain number of increment of women that attend antenatal and also screen for HIV, so that we can eliminate transmission of mother-to-child transmission. Ditto for women under reproductive age, accepting or having access to modern contraceptives. Ditto also for children immunized with Penta 3. Similarly, children also taking vitamin A. So these are the specific indicators that we're measuring. Therefore, every year, if in a state like Lagos State, that has about 10 million population, and out of that, let's say 10% of the population are actually children, meaning 1 million of the children, 1 million of the population of Lagos are children under 5. It now assume that every year, our target is the entire 1 million population must be immunized, must have access to vitamin A.
One of your mandate is to improve the state of health care facilities, especially at the primary level. Now, we do know again that most primary healthcare centers in the country are in a terrible, terrible state.
That's correct.
How is this?
Well, if we say terrible state now, we're not talking about the structures, but studies have shown all over the world that what attracts patients to facilities is not really the structure. Yes, we're talking about quality of care, which also talks about the ambience of the facility. But beyond that, the services being provided, the quality of services being provided is what we are looking at. Now, what we decided to do as a federal government, as a government now is, over the years, we have invested so much from MDGs to health sector development, and so many projects that government actually introduced, where we build facilities, we equip the facilities. Even during the MSS era, midwife service scheme, we recruited midwives from Abuja and sent to various states of the federation. But what the program is doing now is, hey, state, we cannot continue to midwife you. You know, as a state, you should put your people in front. You should make healthcare as a priority. Therefore, you should develop a program that will address those areas that actually cause mothers and children to die every year in your state. Therefore, some states, like Rivers State, they have beautiful primary care facilities. If you go to some states, very poor healthcare facilities. Now it's left to those states to now, and that's why we're working with them, to now begin to look carefully in each area. How many healthcare facilities do you have? How many are functional? Now we're now looking at functionality of the primary healthcare center, not the facility alone. Okay. Facility is important, but functionality, patient coming in, having access to, he is well received, first of all, by the quality healthcare worker, being attended to very well, receiving medication, if need for investigation. Investigations are carried out. Women that are coming in for labor, they will have the antenatal there, they will deliver in the facilities. Children will have access to immunization in the facilities. That's what we're looking at in terms of making primary health care functional.
Well, let's stay with the primary health care. I do know that it's the duty of the local government councils. And here we are now talking about the federal government establishing one PHC per ward across the country.
Now, you see, whether we like it or not, under the saving $1 million program for result, funds are given directly to the states to implement those activities. But the federal government, again, in its magnanimity, I would like to use the word magnanimity, to support the states, still decided to now make one PHC functional per ward in Nigeria. It is a support. Now, that support, if you look at even one PHC per ward making a functional, is a minuscule of the total number of PHCs in Nigeria. What we're trying to say as a federal government is, states, you also pick up this type of project and also make all the PHCs functional in your state. So what federal government is doing really is just an additional support to what the states are supposed to be doing.
It's heartwarming to know that a lot of progress is being recorded. Absolutely. But if I'm to ask you, where do you think we haven't touched yet in regards to PHCs and how to make them very functional?
Human resources. Human resources. There's a huge disproportion and disproportionate allocation of human resources. If you go to Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, you find the highest number of human resources. If you go to states like Sokoto, for example, most of the human resources are actually based inside Sokoto city. You go to Tangaza, Godabawa, Ilela, and some other rural areas, you won't see doctors. Certainly you won't see consultants. And in PHC, you don't even see nurses. You don't see midwives. You see community health extension workers who, in some cases, are poorly trained. Therefore, that is one area I personally believe government at every level, but particularly the state and local government. My dream is each state, as a country, each state should target attaining universal health coverage. By that, each state must actually recruit and train her healthcare workers and push them to rural areas where they actually come from.
Let's rush through this last question. Aside from the initial World Bank fund, what other options are there for accessing funding for this project?
Yeah, the beauty of it is that at the beginning, a lot of partners actually became interested. And every day we find more partners actually coming in, trying to see how they will support or how they can come in and contribute to the effort of government in Saving 1 Million Lives program for result. We have the Gates Foundation. For example, the Gates Foundation have actually offered to fund our service for the next 5 years. What it means is that we are now going to have a steady source of acquiring data for the country and for the states and local government in a disaggregated manner, both smart survey and health facility survey. That's one. Two, we have other partners that the Department for Foreign and International Development, DFID, MSCH2, they are also working with us in strengthening the PHC through training and retraining of healthcare workers. We have the EU, we have so many other, WHO, they're constantly there with us, UNICEF, they're constantly there with us. and UNFPA. So,
obviously, the 7.1 million lives project is something that is there to you, and you seem to be excited about it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Let me thank you very much for coming, Dr. Kano, on the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Let me thank you for staying with us. We'd like to hear from residents of especially the nation's capital about incidences of open defecation in your area. Do feel free to send pictures, views and comments using the email address and Twitter handles on your screen. Also, be sure to share anything happening within your locality. You may watch any episode of the program on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I'm Ibrahim Adra, and we'll see you again next time.